Okay.
7:01.
Are we on the air? Yes, I believe we are.
Oh, is that part of the neighborhood?
Good evening and welcome to the August 24th, 2022 meeting of the Chelmsford Planning Board. We are being televised. I don't know if it's live. They haven't told me that, but it's on Chelmsford Telemedia. We also have a Zoom connection. You're welcome to use it. People are welcome to use it, but keep in mind that if something happens to the internet, we're not going to stop the meeting. Not that anything ever happens to the internet. Okay. Let me start up with our public input session, and then we will go into public hearing on a citizen's petition to amend. Anybody from the public wish to say something? Hello, Henry.
Hello. Charlie.
You sure look like him.
Former planning board member. Just had a couple of questions. I've been really busy. I haven't been able to get back. I know in May, we were supposed to have the review of what buildings are doing as far as keeping up with their stuff. I don't know if anything ever happened as far as the landscaping or anything else. I know Walgreens is still a mess. The exit sign's been laying on the ground now for 2 years. I know Walgreens has a corporate agenda that they don't do anything unless somebody calls up and complains. I know when we were here last time, Paul said he was going to hire a third building inspector because we didn't have enough manpower to handle it. I don't know if there was ever anything done. I know there's a few other places in town, like the hotel. I remember George put up a big thing about no trailer storage and everything else, because that's what we had up in Drum Hill.
Yep.
I know we have that now in the center of town. I know the town, Paul Cohen came here himself, and Evan said May's when was the stuff supposed to be reviewed. I'm just trying to find out if anything ever happened.
Okay.
That's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Henry. Do we have anything, I wonder, what is the status there?
So my engagement with Walgreens was to get them to bring the landscaping up to compliance.
Okay.
That was done. I'm aware of the sign.
Yeah.
You can certainly reach out to them on the sign. On the hotel, there are multiple departments that are engaged with a variety of violations.
Okay.
One being the trailers. Last I heard, the trailers were there to remove beds, and then beds spilled out outside the trailers. So inspectors have been in the building and outside the building. Like I said, I know Board of Health in particular, as well as the building department, are actively engaged with that property.
Okay, so that's being actively worked? Okay.
Yep. And then on the, so the May thing comes up because that's what's in your decisions.
Yeah.
Your last boilerplate condition that's attached to all of your decisions says, basically in May, the property owners should be doing an annual review, replacing dead, dying, and missing landscaping, and bring it up to compliance. So that's the reference to May. I think the other reference was if the town were to institute some sort of comprehensive, proactive annual inspection and compliance, we would likely start in May.
Yeah, to match up with
Or
that.
June.
Or June, right.
If they're supposed to do it in May, then we should probably check it in June.
That's, that by itself may be worth some discussion during the work session, what we might do there.
Yeah, certainly. And as we've discussed previously, while I can serve as an agent to the board and I can go out and do those annual inspections, that would take
It's
a
a lot
lot
of
of time with
footwork,
one person.
That's a lot.
So currently, they're handled primarily with board input. And over the years, individual board members have brought in, dates back over 10 years ago, where board members would bring to meetings, properties that they wanted staff to look into, either generally or more specifically. And as Henry mentioned, he would do that as well. So that's welcomed, and I've mentioned that to the board. Whether you want to do that publicly or privately, that's your choice as a board member. That level of detail usually doesn't get reported by the general public. It's usually by acting, existing or previous board members who know
Okay.
the intricacies of the requirements. Unless there's a particular abutter who,
Yeah.
asked for and received particular screening, buffering, or fencing.
Okay. Well, it's probably worth a work session discussion as to how we might push that forward a little, roll that ball forward. Because it has been a problem in the past in various properties. Okay. Anybody else would like to speak on matters that aren't currently before the board, at least? Anybody? Okay, in that case, we're going to go into a new public hearing. Let's see, do we have a readable announcement?
On the agenda.
Okay. Okay, this is a planning board public hearing and recommendation to town meeting. It's based on the citizens' petition to amend the town code, chapter 195 zoning bylaw, article 20 terminology, by replacing the existing definition of warehouse and to add 3 new definitions, small, medium, and large distribution center, and to amend attachment 1 use regulation schedule by adding small, medium, and large distribution center. And we have a presentation that'll go into a few more details as to what's being proposed and what's being presented.
Just to clarify,
Yep.
Deirdre has joined us and Erica has joined us.
Okay, so we
The
got
only
Deirdre-
board member that is not participating right now is Anita.
Okay, got it. You're up, Chris.
Good evening. So I'm going to present tonight the same version that I presented to you last time. No changes have been made since we last spoke. But I figured it might be a good idea to present this to the public as well. So why are we doing this? The business models are continuously changing, partially due to the pandemic, where companies needed to pivot their models in order to survive, partially due to typical advances in technology and evolution of business models through normal competition. Some examples are that less office space is needed now because more remote work is happening. Delivery of goods is increasing because people are doing more online shopping than in-person shopping. And more distribution centers and these last mile facilities are popping up all over the country. They're becoming more prolific and smaller with new technology. They're becoming more efficient and automated, hiring fewer people into the facility. According to a 2019 AP report, Amazon had 200,000 robot vehicles deployed in their distribution centers. That is double from 2018 and way up from 15,000 in 2014. So why are we doing this to the bylaws? We need to protect our infrastructure. We need to stay current to protect our town, our wetlands, open space, wildlife, our safety and jobs, our town character, all while allowing progress. We do want to attract businesses that we want in town. But do we want businesses that build automated distribution centers that hire very few full-time workers with benefits and hire contract drivers from out of town or out of state that we aren't able to control? Our singular one-size-fits-all definition of a warehouse is outdated and does not take into account any of these updates. So what we're proposing is 3 warrant articles. First is the warehouse distribution or warehouse definition replacement. The second is a distribution center definition addition with 3 sizes, and addition of the new lines in the regulation schedule for distribution centers. So Article 1, as you can see on the next slide, or that slide, It allows it distinguishes lower traffic, lower volume warehouse from higher volume, higher traffic distribution centers. It focuses the definition of a warehouse to facilities that are built to store things as their primary purpose. It's intended to exclude facilities that are primarily meant to transfer, distribution, or transition goods and material rather than storage as a primary use. You want to go to the second article? I covered most of that
Jump to the
in
second
that.
one, sorry.
Yep,
Thank
it's
you.
okay. I'm going a little bit faster tonight. The second article divides up the distribution center definition into three separate definitions based on size. While still following the original intent of our initial proposal, we clearly distinguish a higher traffic, higher volume distribution center from the lower volume, lower traffic warehouse. We focus the definition of a distribution center on facilities that are built primarily to transfer, distribute, or transition goods and material as their primary purpose, rather than storage as their primary purpose. It's intended to include parcel hub and sorting facilities that are also primarily built to distribute and transfer and transition. So why the three sizes? So first of all, we chose the 50,000 square foot as the cutoff between large and medium. This proposal is based primarily on Acton as a model, a town very similar to ours, and they use the 50,000 cutoff as well. Our area is similar to theirs in that they're located at the intersection of two major routes, 495 and Route 2. Slightly smaller, but it's similar populations. They have similar goals and aspirations in their Acton 2020 Comprehensive Community Plan as ours. In researching many of these last mile distribution centers that are popping up, most are currently ranging in the 200,000 to 250,000 square foot range. But one of the newest ones in Bridgewater for Amazon is about 155,000 square feet. That's a significant recent shift in business model and efficiency from Amazon that reduced their last mile footprint by roughly 50,000 square feet. It won't be long before another shift in the business model or efficiency allows these to be even smaller. So that's why we chose the 50,000 square foot cutoff. We also divided up the medium and small based on a little bit of alignment with the a major business complex threshold. Another aspect is that many of these larger 200,000 square foot buildings offer space for multiple tenants and not just one. So a 150,000 square foot building could easily be divided by two tenants operating 75,000 square foot distribution centers. So we feel that the 50,000 and the 20,000 are decent cutoffs for the three sizes. We also cleaned up the distinction between warehouse and distribution center and keeps the definitions separate based on usage, primary usage. So in Article 3, we took those three distribution center lines in the table, and we added a line for the medium distribution center permitted in the industrial zone by special permit, and the small distribution center permitted in IA and CC by special permit. The large distribution centers are not permitted in any zone. And we're hoping with the granularity of the definitions, as well as the sizes, we're hoping that these bylaws will be a little bit forward-thinking and be able to take future changes in mind as well. So that as things come up and business models change and efficiencies grow, we'll be able to be more proactive in these zoning changes and be able to adjust as needed. So that's my presentation.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Well prepared. Okay, let me run it around the board once and then open it up to more public comment. Anybody have any particular comments or questions at this stage? I know we've all seen this a couple of times, so. Okay, I'd also note that Evan prepared a rather detailed letter on some of the topics involved here. It's pretty long. I think reading it probably would, it would probably take up more time than we want to take up, but I would suggest that those who have an interest go take a look. It's in the record. I have a copy of it here with my agenda, and you can certainly get a copy. All right. That said, hello, Deirdre. Nick.
Hi.
Who from the public would like to speak on the citizens petition? Do we have anybody? Hi, George.
I guess I'll go first. George Zaharoulis, Mr. Chairman, Planning Board members. I believe that the applicant, the maker of the article, has every good intention, but I think there's a lot of holes still. And being on that side of the desk before, anything that leaves this body, those holes have to be plugged. So you talk about distribution centers, you talk about warehouse. The definitions, when I looked at them, to me, appeared to be a little bit confusing. There's no mention of fulfillment centers. There's no mention of business-to-business warehouses. There's no mention of direct-to-consumer warehouses. You know, if we have a business in town that grows, and they have a warehouse, and let's say it's plumbing items, okay? And they have multiple stores throughout Massachusetts, and they want to distribute, buy the pipe, put it in their warehouse, and then distribute it to other facilities. If their space is over 50,000 square feet, it wouldn't be allowed under this bylaw. So we have to be conscious of these things, about where we are with them. The other part of this is, yes, I'll agree that the warehouse definition is outdated, and the planning board did try to address that, I believe, a couple of years ago. It's addressed in master plan about fulfillment centers, ghost kitchens, and a few other things. You know, the buildings in the IA district were built over 50 years ago, and they were designed for a single-use tenant. And single-use tenants, buildings, they don't need as much space anymore. Computer rooms used to be huge and large. Now they're on a desktop. So those buildings are quite outdated, and it's hard to retrofit it. People don't need as much space. So I understand that people are going to these models of warehouses and distribution centers. But it comes up where, what if there's a company that buys component parts, makes kits, or makes a piece of equipment, puts it in a warehouse, and then takes orders over the phone, and then ships them out to the end user? If it's over 50,000 square feet, you talk about net floor area ratio. That takes into account net floor area. It takes into account office space, warehouse space, production space, in the whole building. So then that would not be allowed under this bylaw. That it's not clear to me whether they would be allowed, if they have over 50,000 square feet in the building, if they'd be allowed to ship their product to the end user. So to me, I think there's some holes here. I think they need to be plugged. You know, I haven't sat on the board for a long time, but I know when you go before town meeting, if you don't have the answers to all the questions, you're not going to get the vote. So I'm just looking at some notes here that I have. You know, I think, you know, in the definition, you talk about in warehouse it says building. Then the next definition, it says establishment and building. They don't mirror each other. What's an establishment? You know, I don't get that. So I'm going to just go through my notes here and see what else I have. You know, one of our largest employers in the town of Chelmsford. It's UPS. They bring good-paying jobs. You see the brown trucks, they go out at 9 o'clock. If you want to see them, go to 129 at the corner. There's a police officer there directing traffic. So they provide jobs in the community. They're in a location that is pretty close to the highway. They've put a big sign up now so the tractor-trailer trucks don't go past the driveway. They turn into the lot to avoid going down into the residential neighborhood. So one of the things I would look at if I were your board, we have an overlay already, BAOD, Business Amenity Overlay, which has exclusion zones. And the exclusion zones are close to the residential neighborhoods. The rest of it is basically on 129. Why can't we have something for a distribution center larger than 50,000 square feet in there? And maybe you cap it at 100,000. And the other part of this is the building Stop and Shop's in is approximately 75,000 square feet. So I throw that out there because I want you to see what a 75,000 square foot building is. And I know that because that was remanded back to the planning board over an appeal because the floor area was determined by the building inspector, and the court said he was off by, I think it was 4,000 or 5,000 square feet, which goes directly related to parking. So I think that the maker of the article is on a path that the planning board should be on to carry forward, plug the holes, and come back with a complete picture. Thank you.
Thanks, George. And me?
Talking about Stop and Shop, would Snow Pea be allowed deliveries out of there, which they do? I mean, when I was in here before and we were talking about it, I asked if any board members had been to any of the distributing centers. Burlington's done a wonderful job with it. Really done a great job. Paul, I know you've been. Have you ever been to Webb in Burlington?
Yeah.
Wouldn't be loud.
The one behind it either.
No. I get it. The presenter said between, Route 2 and 495, that now has the largest Amazon distributing center in the area. That intersection. So, yeah, I mean, it's huge. I grew up in Littleton. I spent a lot of time there. My family had businesses there. Go by and look at it. They do a lot better landscaping job than some of these places we have been putting in. Burlington, they got a lot of infrastructure money out of all those businesses. They put divided road in. They make sure that the trucks go right down and right onto Route 3. And believe it or not, folks, they pay a lot of taxes. We like schools. We like to have a nice big DPW that does great jobs in town. We do, we have playgrounds, we have all that stuff. A home takes and uses more town funds than it brings in. But yeah, I agree with George. I just don't like the way it's written. I think we're going to have a lot of Stop and Shop's been in town for years. I mean, I worked in Amazon in Everett. You can't get any more in the city. They make it work. Not only do they have the Amazon delivery there, they got the grocery store delivery. They worked with the towns. They've got it down so they can deliver the stuff without creating huge traffic. It's right down beyond 2nd Street with all the scrap yards, everything else. They don't have to have a beautiful location, but I can never see us getting an Amazon here, especially where 93 is covered with a huge deficit. We got Route 2 covered. We've got Nashua. I go to the Granite City in Nashua. Not only would the Granite City not be allowed, the Amazon behind them wouldn't be allowed. If you go down 101, which is a very busy road, out behind all those stores is all distributing centers now. And I know the traffic's bad, but if you take and listen, I asked the guy at Amazon when we were down in Everett, I says, how the heck did you guys ever get this in here? Because I know the trouble that Chelmsford was having. And he goes, we actually did a study. We came out. We showed that we actually reduced the traffic on the road. I know you're gonna bring this article in front of town meeting, and that's, where it should be debated, but you don't have to support it. The idea of a planning board is to do their homework and make recommendations to it, or, let it go one way or another, but you need to do your homework. Go to some of these places and see what the other towns have done. Thank you.
Thanks, George.
Hi, Glenn Thorne, Precinct 7. It's easy to get distracted from what the actual intent of an article like this is meant to be. You can present a lot of hypothetical situations about what if a company like this wanted to come in, what if a company like that wanted to come in and had different kinds of products and different kinds of storage issues and different things that they wanted to do. There's a lot of what ifs when you look at the future of Chelmsford. The only what if you should be considering is, what do you want it to look like? What do the residents of Chelmsford want Chelmsford to look like, 10 years from now, maybe even longer, depending on what comes into the town to occupy the space that we have available on Route 129 or any place else. So, I can pose a lot of hypothetical situations where only small business would come in, and a lot of them, if you make the town amenable to small businesses and clusters of small businesses. And that's not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about is, should there be some kind of measurement, some kind of restrictions on the size of warehouses redefined and distribution centers and any other similar definition of a place where a lot of stuff comes in and a lot of stuff goes out and traffic is created. To think that Amazon might come into Chelmsford and drop a giant building in town and give us a lot of tax revenue, it's a wonderful thought, but what's it going to do to the town? We won't know until the building ends up here and causes a traffic problem, and then you can do nothing. So you have to think about what you want the town to look like in the future as opposed to the way it is now. If 129 converts all the unused space into large distribution centers, that's going to be a challenge for the town in a number of ways, infrastructure, traffic, and a number of other things. So the question is, what do we want the town to look like? Now, that's a question for town meeting as well as you. You have to take a look at it from the planning board perspective and say, in the future, we would like to have a lot of huge distribution centers in Chelmsford, and don't limit it to 50,000 square feet, make it 500,000 square feet. I mean, you have to decide where you want the town to go because you are the planning board. And you've got committees that you've put together for the future of the town, what the master plan is going to look like, what your intent was. I've read the master plan. It's a long document, very well written, but it's got a lot of great information in there about the kind of town that at least one point in the past you thought that we should be in the future because you approved it. So now we have this in front of us. It clearly is not perfect, but it has a high-level message that there are small distribution center-like operations that would be fine in a couple of areas of town. There are medium-sized distribution centers that would be okay in maybe one particular area in the town, and very large distribution centers probably not what the town wants, or at least that's what it presumes. And that's why we go to town meeting, because the debate at town meeting and your recommendation or lack thereof, which will also lead to debate at town meeting, will help the town decide which direction they want to go in. So I have a question for Mr. Haverty here. If these numbers, the small, medium, and large numbers in square feet were considered maybe too restrictive and everybody wanted a town meeting to bump them up by 25,000 square feet for each definition, is that an acceptable amendment at town meeting?
Yes, yeah, because that would be within the scope, because the
Right.
the proposed zoning article is proposing to limit the size of these types of uses, and something that goes, between what is proposed and what is already allowed is within the scope of that zoning article.
Yeah, Mr. Zahulis gave a good, sample of, the Stop and Shop is 75,000 square feet, if I remember what he said. And, it's a big building on the inside, and I tried to imagine that as a distribution center. It's still a big building, but it might be okay if there's a location where that fits and is appropriate. So maybe 50,000 should be 75. I don't know, but town meeting certainly, according to what you said, would have the right to make that alteration in it.
Correct.
And, the word warehouse can be defined in a bunch of different ways. So I think the attempt to get it defined for us for this point in time was reasonably good. And at town meeting, we may want to add a few words or take a few words away to make it clear. But the important thing is to be clear about what you're defining for a distribution center. What do they do? And a warehouse, what does it do? And the things that I had a little bit of trouble with that might require some improvement at town meeting is low volume and high volume. What's that mean? So I think of it in terms of, how many trucks are going to come in and out of this facility in a given day. That sort of would tell me whether it's low volume or high volume, but how many is that? So, those two particular subcategories of low volume and high volume might require a little bit additional information, which, again, since it's within the scope of the warrant article, could be proposed at town meeting. Am I correct?
Correct.
Good. So I'm here to support this article from the point of view is it gives us an opportunity in the short term to put something in front of town meeting that will be meaningful for the short term, next year, next 2 years, what happens in the short term with our town if large buildings are intended to come in and can acquire space in the town. It will slow that process down so we can get a better look at it. It'll allow the town meeting to say what they want based on what the arguments are at town meeting. I'll know more about it by the time we reach October, but there's a lot to be said about this particular thing. And it's not putting it off till the spring or next October or something like that. It gives us a chance to have a more clear definition of what we want the town to look like in the future based on what your intent would be for the town to look like, because you'll chime in one way or the other on this, and what the town meeting's intent for the town to look like in the future will be. And I think it'll be a very good discussion at town meeting, so I hope getting the article from here to town meeting will not be a laborious process, and it will reach town meeting in some form, which I assume it will, and then we can discuss it at that point in time. Again, not perfect definitions, but from the big picture of what could occur for putting large structures and facilities in the town, I thought it was a good proposal, and I would support a proposal like this, or this proposal going forward for further discussion, because I think it's only a few things that will either make it pass or eliminate it from the future of town meeting.
Thank you, Glenn.
Good evening. Sheila Pichette, Shed Lane, Chelmsford. I agree with the first two gentlemen that spoke in many regards. There's some loopholes here, but all in all, I do feel that they're very good proposals. We need to look as a community at definitive structure of how we're going to move forward in the future with our industry. And tonight we haven't mentioned the size of a warehouse directly affects the size and the number of truck traffic you have on the road. The truck traffic has a direct influence on how a town feels, how it looks, and how it sees itself in the future. Also, this is in a residential neighborhood. It is not direct, even indirect, to a highway. There are 1, 2, 3, 4 turns that you need to get onto
Well,
the highway.
This is generic. I mean, this,
The whole town. This is
Right.
going to affect the whole town.
Right, but in a situation like this, in another part of the town, it would be the same. You need to have it more close to the highway. But in relation to the size, again, the truck traffic has a lot to do with the types of neighborhood that this industry or other industries with the size of this building would warrant. So I really feel that this is a good start. I hope that there's a lot of changes to make it even better, but I think it's a very good overall start to what we need to look at in the future. And I hope we can move forward with this proposal to town meeting and look at it in different ways, because it is important for our town to look at the size of these industrial buildings coming in. Thank you.
thanks a lot, Sheila.
Erin Drew, Precinct 10. I just want to say, and I don't claim to be an expert on this, but as a previous transportation professional, I've been in a number of distribution centers, some of them very large, some of them on the smaller side. And in my experience, and in reading this article, I find the effort to kind of define the different types of centers and distribution centers versus warehouses admirable. But I think it's a very difficult thing to do. I mean, I've been in when I was kind of in my career, a lot of the push was for speed to market, and part of that was doing that through cross-dock operations, where you keep the facility small, but the trucks come in and out faster. They did less storage and more movement. So, that would be a smaller facility, but the traffic impact of a distribution center like that would be bigger than a facility that has more storage. So, I think the effort behind this article is good, and I do think that the code could use a little bit of clarification. I think trying to do that is much more difficult, and actually making a decision on a case-by-case basis is a little more nuanced. You have to look at the neighborhood. River Neck Road is not the place. where UPS is, to a lot of people's point, is the place. The highway is right there, I mean, it does come with its problems, but the location is right. I like the idea of this petition, but I agree with others that I think it could use a little bit of tweaking. And I do think that limiting anything outside of 50,000 takes out of the hands of the planning board the ability to make a lot of decisions for the town, decisions that might even be good for the town if the right opportunity did arise. So I hate to kind of take those off the table altogether and take that out of your hands as the planning board, who we've elected and trusted to make those decisions and to take all of the things into account, including the neighborhood and the size and the traffic and all of that. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Aaron.
Good evening, guys. Tracy Cole, precinct, what am I, 9. I have some questions that I need clarification on. And I'm not exactly sure who can answer them. I think Evan, warehouse, if somebody wanted to come in and just build warehouse in IA under CEIOD, we don't have restrictions on how big they can make that, correct? Isn't it dependent on the size of the lot?
Well, anything over 20,000 square feet outside of, nothing to do with COID, requires a major business complex special permit.
Okay, so they have a 20,
Anything over 20 triggers a major business complex special permit. To answer your question directly, we use FAR in the COID and every other commercial industrial zoning
I don't know
district.
what that is.
Floor area ratio.
I'm stupid, remember?
No. Sorry, floor area ratio regulates the maximum square footage that can be on any one property based upon its size of the lot.
Okay, so, I mean, I'm looking at the COID, and by right, in the IA, it says 45.
0.45 FAR.
Wait a minute. Floor to area ratio, it says by right is 54.
What was it, 5.4?
0.54.
So for every 1 acre of land, 43,560 square feet of land area, that FAR 0.45 can accommodate 23,522 square feet
Okay,
per that COID provision. However, it still requires a major business complex because it's over 20,000. So
okay,
the major business complex currently serves as the zoning safety net in which the planning board, on a case-by-case basis, based upon the unique circumstances of the neighborhood and the proposal, makes a decision on a case-by-case basis. Any commercial or industrial over 20,000.
so that's still a pretty good size.
For a commercial industrial, it's on the lower end, a smaller scale.
Decent.
Most commercial industrial buildings on 129 are well over 20,000.
Okay. I just lost my train of thought. what would prevent a business or, okay, so if there's a plumbing company that, all right, what is it, AutoZone in Drum Hill, it's a chain, right? So if they wanted to have a warehouse here in Chelmsford that supplies their parts to their store in Chelmsford and other stores in the surrounding towns, that would be classified as a warehouse, not technically a distribution center, right?
Under current zoning,
Yeah.
that would be classified as a warehouse. And if it were over 20,000 square feet, it would need a special
would need a
permit from the
permit.
planning board.
Okay, so even under this definition, it would be still classified as a warehouse because under this, it says a warehouse can store and ship and repackage and, right?
My suggestion is that the proponent answer that question. I think that some of the questions or comments that have been raised previously tonight by other members of the public.
Well, I don't think, I mean, I was listening to them say that, that they were wondering if, the plumbing company would be able to have a warehouse here. But it falls under warehouse, not under distribution centers, doesn't it?
I'll answer it for myself if I were.
I don't know who needs to answer,
If
to be
If this
honest.
passed and I were the building commissioner who serves as the zoning officer, I would deem that a distribution center, primarily because it says the distribution of goods and materials to retail stores or other market outlets.
Yeah.
So business to
Right, but
business.
if you go up to warehouse,
I understand.
There is no more warehouse.
this is where I get, I need.
I understand this, and
And
this,
I think that,
Warehouse is just storing, it's not distributing, so
why don't we hear from the proponent?
under this, all the,
I mean, that may be one
Oh,
of the
goes away.
items that needs to be clarified.
That's the current.
oh, well, I think this is what the town meeting reps are gonna need clarification on is, because in warehouse, it says that you can ship and redistribute, and basically for the most part, the description of a warehouse is virtually the same as the description of a distribution center.
Well, just
Not
just to provide some context, the proponent's done an excellent job articulating his, what he views as distinctions, and he continued to do that this evening. So my suggestion is, let's hear from
Yeah,
the proponent.
yeah, I agree.
He's right behind you.
Yeah.
So he'll answer.
Come and answer my questions.
Do you have any others? Because I'll answer a bunch.
I might, but I kind of lost my train of thought. I'll get back to you.
So to answer that question and a few others from tonight, first of all, I want to say I appreciate everyone's input and comments on the proposal. I would invite all of you to help me reshape this if possible. I will be reaching out to all of you to help clarify the points that you raised. Some of them are really good points, and so I appreciate that. To clarify some of the questions that came up, and to yours as well, the primary use is really what I've highlighted in these definitions. So in that case, for the plumbing, for the examples, some of the examples that came up, the primary use of that building is to store the parts until they're ready for retail sale. So if you take an Amazon or a Chewy example, the primary use of that type of building is for the distribution of the material and the sale. The primary purpose of Amazon's business model is to turn over that inventory and to sell the inventory. The primary use of the supply parts is for storage until they're ready to be sold.
don't they both require a truck to bring stuff in and out of wherever they need to go?
Yes, and so that is,
Doesn't make any
It's a
sense to
slower
me.
process. is
so
that
it's a
what you're-
slower process, fewer trucks, and the business model of each of these, in addition to the size of the building, the number of bays, it's all about the impact to the town. One of the other, Mr. Parley brought up the fact that studies have shown that these distribution centers do decrease traffic. While that has been shown to be true, in terms of total traffic, they may be decreasing, but in terms of truck traffic, it's actually increasing. So that is what we're trying to do here, is define the amount of truck traffic that can go in and out based on the uses. So I would ask that anyone who has had comments and questions, please reach out to me. I'll definitely be reaching out to all of you to see if we can improve this before town meeting. I believe the deadline for submitting this final version is September 6th, so I'll be reaching out before that.
So, if you don't mind, I just asking.
Could you step up and, just present your question so we can get it on the record?
Introduce yourself and state where you live.
My name is Barbara LaVisca. I have a small business in town, and I'm very curious about all of this small, medium, and large warehouse because of how it impacts the residents around those particular buildings that might be either repurposed or built from new. So my question is, what I haven't heard is anything about the residents that might be around these buildings, the impact on them. So I understand warehouse is different from distribution center because less traffic or less truck traffic as a resident is important to me. If I see a lot of Amazon trucks going in and out all the time, that's a distribution center. If I see a truck going to a warehouse maybe once a day, I might be less concerned about that. So what I haven't heard is the impact, or if this proposal is what would it mean to the immediate residents that might be just around where this building would be.
That is managed in other places in the bylaw.
Okay.
And has to do with, for example, in an IA, there are buffering requirements as it, backs up against residential.
Okay.
While there may be shortcomings in that, the mechanism exists.
Okay, I'll go look it up.
Yep,
Thank you.
thanks.
I just wanted to add to that as well that in the traffic studies, the type of use of the building also helps determine the amount of impact on traffic on the residents. And so based on the traffic codes that are used for these distribution centers, the high cube distribution centers, the overall traffic may, depending on the size of the building, because it depends on the size, may be lower, but the amount of truck traffic compared to other uses like office buildings is increased.
Yeah. Thanks, Chris. Anyway,
Just make a quick suggestion. George had brought it up, I don't know if anybody really picked up on it. Just redo the drawings for IA. Keep it in, 3-4 mile district, short district off of 129. Get rid of Up Mill Road, get rid of it off of Riverneck. Do
Yeah.
a smaller in Route 40, do Drum Hill, because, Walmart is gonna be looking to doing stuff coming out of there. It's a huge building. I think if you maybe even incorporated that into it, that you cut down that the people aren't worried about a Riverneck Road project. People aren't worried about Mill Road. People aren't worried about a lot of stuff. You could take right in that definition, you could draw another line.
We talked about doing an overlay.
Yeah, yeah,
This is taking it out of our hands right now.
yeah.
That's right.
We don't
Well-
have the time to do that. This is gonna go forward.
I
and it's
understand.
taking it out of the planning board's hands.
Yeah, so but that has to be given up as an option, that's what we're giving up by doing it.
yeah.
Thank you.
Anita
Thanks, George.
Teniti has joined us.
Huh?
Anita has joined
Okay,
us.
good. Hi, Tracy?
Hi, Tracy Cole again. I just wanted to make a couple of statements to the planning board, specifically that our primary area of IA, I think the largest one is off of 129.
Right.
You start putting in distribution centers there, large ones, you're not going to stop the trucks from going down Golden Cove, down Mill Road, down Turnpike. Even the warehouse or what distribution center, whatever they're talking about putting on with the no left turn, no right turn, and you pushing them over to Route 3, there's nothing that's going to stop them from going down Mill Road and down Turnpike. I live on Turnpike. The tractor trailer trucks, the big ones that haul down that road, shake my house. I am constantly fixing my knickknacks because they're getting vibrated all over the place. There's no way you're going to prevent them from doing that. Even with that no right turn, you get a driver that doesn't know the area, their GPS is going to tell them. They're, recalculating. It's the famous word. They're going to go down Mill Road, down Turnpike, because they want to head to 495. You're not going to prevent it. And that's the biggest area that we have for distribution centers. We're not Burlington. We're not Brockton. We're not Somerville. We're not those big cities. I could probably speak for a grand majority of people when I say that we don't want the large ones, distribution, tractor trailer trucks. Our roads can't handle it. With the infrastructure can handle cars. It can handle a lot of car traffic. Those tractor trailer trucks are gonna rip up our roads, and they're already not great. There's the bad paving job that they did on Turnpike Road after they built the apartment buildings. They come down the road, even the UPS and the FedEx trucks come down the road and they hit those 3 consecutive potholes right there in front of that apartment building. Thud. Their gates are going up and down in the back. It's noisy and it vibrates my house. Nan knows what I'm talking about. She lives on 110.
Yep.
The exact same thing. I get it every day. And the cars, I swear to God, they're doing 80. I need a radar gun. They're doing 80 going down Turnpike. From what I understand, Turnpike Road is called the Chelmsford Highway. And you're not going to stop the trucks from doing it. We need to do something to limit the amount of tractor trailer trucks that are coming into the town on a regular basis. And I like the idea of this. I think it needs work. And I'm not sure what it needs. But it needs to be airtight and it needs to be very well defined so there's no questions. There's no, I'm going to come in on CEIOD with a warehouse because I can get a larger building than classifying as a distribution center. Who's going to determine whether they have long-term or short-term storage? There's things that I think need to be worked out in the wording. So there's no question. There's a distribution center and there's a warehouse. If Walmart wants to have a warehouse here and distribute to they're going to ship to me from the warehouse instead of having it in the store. If Stop and Shop wants to have a pea pod, to me, that's classified as warehouse because it's a store-supported facility. Am I completely wrong in this? It's not like Amazon or Chewy that comes in and has a last mile distribution center type thing. So we're not the bigger towns. Burlington does it. They have road and infrastructure that handles it. Brockton does it. They do a great job. They've got the infrastructure that handles it. We don't have the infrastructure to handle it. Plain and simple, really. It's what it boils down to. So we need to figure something out to save or rebuild the whole infrastructure. Pick your poison, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? All right, that's it. Thank you.
Joel Luna, 10 Carter Drive. I was thinking probably one of the big differences, I would think, between a warehouse and a distribution center is the point of sale, where the sale for a distribution center is from the source, and then that comes through the distribution center to where it's being delivered, whereas a warehouse, I would think, their point of sale is, they get the material, but then they're looking to sell it. So there's some time lag that gets associated with it. I mean, that would be my thought. I don't know if that's true or not. But the thing I did want to say is that what I like about these is that they base it on the floor size, because that's the basis that the Institution for Transportation Engineers uses in determining traffic levels. They struggle with how you classify the different warehouse uses, if you've read any of their stuff, but I would definitely recommend consulting their material as far as how they differentiate between the different uses. But to me, in the end, it's just a matter of what amount of headache. What your recommendation concerns is how much of a headache do you want to have looking at these things? Do you, for your own benefit, want to draw a limit at something to say, over that, we're just not going to look at it? To me, that would be what the gist of your recommendation's about. I would think that you would want to draw the line somewhere. I don't know if 50 is the right level. The thing I would do is I would look at to see what are the different warehouse distribution uses in Chelmsford, how big are they? And then say, okay, about this size, maybe a little bit bigger, but not twice that. I mean, that would be the way I would go at it. So I think that for your sake, I think you want to do a little bit of homework to figure out, where is it that I would want to draw the line, just so that I have the building inspector is the one who's saying no, yes, as opposed to me having to hear a 250,000 square foot warehouse.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, Chris, go ahead.
Just one more comment. A couple alternatives were brought up tonight, as were alternatives brought up in some of our other discussions that we've had. I would encourage the board again, as I have at the other meetings, to investigate the alternatives. And as you do investigate those alternatives, I would be happy to work with you to adjust this definition and these bylaws, if they were to pass, as needed. But a definition of warehousing went before town meeting not that long ago. And it was a pretty resounding defeat for those changes. And it was quite clear from the town meeting reps that we wanted some action by the board to take in response to that. It's been a long time. There's been no movement. So that's why I decided to bring this forward. I would be happy to work with you for other alternatives, but I think in the meantime, we have to do something because we are getting more and more interest in these large warehouses coming in.
Chris, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Everything's based off of the square footages, but all of the complaints that we've heard is regarding trucks.
Mhm.
Why not look at this as instead of the square footages based off of the number of truck trips per day? And do that, because that's the issue in the town, is the truck trips.
Mm-hmm.
Up in the north side of town, we have an issue with a gravel van. We can't put a limit on that, right? But I think what you got to look at here is what we're hearing in every single meeting. It's not the square footages. It's not the look of the building. It's not, it's the trucks that's
Or how much
concerning
they
all the
hold.
residents.
So that's one of the concerns.
So I think you should look at that.
That is one of the concerns.
It's the major concern. If you look at it, it's every single person that has spoke here in the past 3 weeks, the past 3 meetings, it's come up on every single person, trucks. And we're not addressing the trucks. We're addressing the size.
Yep.
But you're not limiting the trucks. I could have 100 trucks, 200 trucks come to a medium size during the day. You don't have an issue with that. But you have an issue with a 50,000 square foot where if I only had
It's
20
based on,
trucks a day.
it's based on the square footage and use of the building.
I understand that.
So.
There's a lot of uses in this bylaw right now, and you've picked one, but there's a lot of, and I think the planning board needs to look at the rest of them. There's a lot of uses in here that need to be updated.
Yeah.
But you've picked one, and, which is great, and I appreciate the start of the discussion, but I think the issue is trucks, and we're not addressing the trucks.
So again, that's one of the issues. A distribution center has a number of different types of issues, especially the large ones. They've got the truck traffic, they've got the delivery vans, which are massive fleets of delivery vans. Those are not considered trucks. So if we did do a restriction based only on trucks, the Amazon business model that we've seen is delivery vans. So they would not get covered by this. They would be allowed if we only based it on trucks.
Well, we could word it vehicles that are going and coming and going from the facility.
Where gross vehicle weight,
Non-passenger
not,
vehicles.
exceeding some
I
number.
think if we're gonna go forward with this and you're gonna get support, no, I'm right now, Anita, you can have your turn. I think we just gotta talk about vehicles. We gotta address, how are we gonna address the vehicles? That seems to be one of the major concerns. And I think so if we start to get the definitions right, we should go down that road.
We could do that. I appreciate the feedback, but I've already met with you twice on this, and I have not heard that feedback.
Well, I just discussed it tonight, and there's more that I have coming, too.
So I appreciate that, and I'm willing to work with you.
We're still digesting this as it's coming.
I understand that.
And we got a timeline down on the end of this, that we either have to support this for you, with you, or not. And you're putting this homework on us to do the homework, to do this.
No, I am not.
Well, you're asking us to do the research.
No, I'm not.
and seeing
I'm
the
asking you to
facilities.
provide me suggestions. If you have suggestions,
Well, there's a
provide
suggestion.
them.
So I think we should look at the vehicles,
Okay.
and then somehow look at vehicles. I don't know how we attack it as a group, but I think we look at vehicles.
But we do this already with this major business complex.
Yeah, we do.
This
We
is,
have-
we're going round and round right now, is what I think. That's my 2 cents. I mean, we do have ways of limiting what's going on.
And though the major business complex will still be a part of this discussion, the only thing we're limiting is the large warehouse, the large distribution centers. We're not limiting the smaller ones and the medium ones. Those are still planning board decision, special permit, based on the major business complex and other special permits.
But 50,000 square feet, I feel like that is not the right number, to be honest with you. I don't know what the right number is. If we're gonna do that, I like Mike's idea of overlay. That's the way,
And
I mean, that's the way to go.
I would
We're gonna
fully
have to
support
do
that,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
Yeah, we
been,
have to do that.
it's been over a year now.
And I get your frustration on that.
2 years.
Yeah, 2 years.
Can I speak here? Because I fully support this. I think it's the first step. We can always tweak it going at any other time. The planning board can come in and make adjustments and present it to town meeting. I think this is what is needed today, right now. If we have an issue about trucks, and quite frankly, I'll tell you exactly where I stand. I don't think distribution centers should be in Chelmsford, period. We already have a large distribution center. I think it adversely affects our tax basis. If we're going from Class A real estate to Class C, which is, we know, is less tax revenue for us. And then, I also want you to take a look, go up to the sex offender registry and see how many are employed at UPS. I know that because I live in East Chelmsford, so I have did have young kids. So I was very much aware. That's not the businesses that I'd like to be bringing into Chelmsford. So, if we have a problem with how this is presented, and we want to tweak it, we want to change it, then let this go to town meeting, let the town meeting reps vote on it, and then we can always adjust it. You're never going to have something that's absolutely perfect, that's going to fit every situation. And there's always going to be better, recommendations as things move forward, as new businesses come in to propose stuff, and we learn. And then we just go, if there needs to be an adjustment, we adjust. And yes, trucks are one of the issues, but that's not the only issue.
Okay, thanks.
I
Good
also
point.
want to point out that the square footage, as someone else pointed out, the use of square footage is also aligned with the way traffic engineers do their traffic studies. So because of that, I figured basing it on the square footage would align it very well with the traffic studies that would accompany all these projects. And you would have both the traffic study and the bylaw to help you make the decisions. The only decision that would be out of your hands in this case would be the large distribution centers.
Okay.
And I think based on the feedback from the town at the last town meeting and at feedback that I've received from this, people are pretty supportive of not having these large distribution centers in town.
But what I'm saying is 50,000 square feet is not a large distribution center. I'll tell you that right now. It's just not. It just seems inadequate.
Then that's a number we can
To
debate at
define
town
that.
meeting.
To define
Yeah,
that. That's,
okay.
that's
Yeah,
my
I would be
input.
happy to debate that number at town meeting.
Yeah, would make some sense. Let me get a word in here before we continue. What are our time constraints for a approval, a yes or a no or
Endorsement.
You can
endorsement?
go right up to town meeting.
Okay.
The next key date is September 12th, which is the date in which the select board signed the warrant. As council's
Okay, but
indicated,
our next meeting is the 14th.
You do not need to take any recommendation before the 12th.
Okay.
What I'm hearing is.
However, the verbiage needs to be stable before the 12th. So if
Ideally.
anybody has any inputs that are going to modify this wording, it needs to be worked out before that
The
time.
problem, yes, but as Mike said, you won't be meeting between now and the
That's right.
12th. So you won't be able to review it as a board or make a recommendation.
Do we need to have a special
Isn't critical.
Yeah.
If the proponent's open to working with the board up until town meeting, that can be done.
Okay.
The complicating factors,
Well-
you have FinCom involved, you have the select board
Yeah.
involved as well, and make a
Well,
recommendation.
the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm trying to determine whether it makes sense to close public hearing, let development continue, because it continue between now and town meeting, and make our recommendation even now, or to leave the public hearing open. At this point, I think we've heard a pretty good slice of public view. We've had 11 people say substantial things about it. So I would not be against closing the hearing and opening it back up again at some point, or just leaving it closed and making a determination now.
My suggestion,
Yeah.
for what it's worth, is if the proponent has indicated that he's willing to continue to work.
Right. Which makes sense.
For all we know, everything's resolved between now and town meeting.
Yeah.
I think the board needs some clear
that-
indication from the proponent, maybe not tonight, but in a short period of time, what specific
But that
comments.
still leaves the issue of do we make a recommendation or not? And if so, what
You
recommendation
have to
do we
make a recommendation, doesn't have to be tonight. You
Okay.
can keep this hearing open right up until the evening of town meeting to accommodate, assuming the proponent
Okay,
is telling you.
I'm perfectly willing to
Right,
do
it's
that.
It's in the proponent's
Yeah.
best interest to attempt to get a favorable recommendation from the planning board.
Right. That's
So
exactly what
tonight
this
was
is.
a great
And I mean, this
conversation.
is-
It's a good dialogue.
This is not a planning board presented item, and we're just
Right.
giving an
And
opinion.
simultaneously,
Yeah.
the planning board needs to decide how much more time and energy you want to put into this.
Yeah.
But if the proponent gives you a clear indication that he's heard a couple of things this evening that he would like to explore and is open to revising, it may resolve the issues.
It could. So, what's your view there?
So I've been told that the deadline for me to submit the wording that will go into the select board vote
Yeah.
is September 6th.
Okay, I can see that. Okay, in that case, I'm going to suggest that we continue the public hearing, because if changes do take place, we'll want to give people a chance to comment on those changes. And then I would propose to go around the board and have sort of interim comments by each board member if they want. And I certainly have some comments that I wish to make. But I'll let everybody else have a shot first.
Can we?
Yeah, what's your question, George?
So, I saw a little confusion with the definitions from
Yeah.
someone else, not just myself. And maybe I'm out of line here, Paul, you can correct me. What happens if the planning board puts forward a moratorium that no more distribution centers that exceed 75,000 square feet up until next town meeting in April? That gives the planning board time to work on something, gives the applicant here time to work on it. You're not going to get a distribution center over 75,000 square feet. And let's get it right. I've been before many town meetings,
Yeah.
okay, where we've brought things before it. I was the chairman of the billboard subcommittee.
I remember
We
that.
studied that up and down. We had the answers to the questions before town meeting,
Okay.
okay? And I think there's still a lot of questions. So that's just an idea I have for you.
All right.
So that you can get this right, sit down with Chris, and maybe a couple other people, create a subcommittee, and get this thing straightened out and
Now,
get it
that's,
done right.
that we are here, well,
But it may not be within the current.
we're here at this point in time to listen and make a recommendation. That's our function. We're not, I don't believe, prepared at this point to work on generating a proposal for a fall town meeting.
I'm talking about
Well, we don't have
Springtown
time
meeting.
Okay, spring,
You
we
put a
might be able to
moratorium
do.
until the Springtown meeting, that you can't build. a
I'm not sure that we can
distribution
put a moratorium on.
You would need to have sufficient time to properly advertise that, because that's not a warrant article that's been advertised yet.
Do we have
You don't have the
enough
time to
You
time?
do
don't have enough time to do it.
No, you don't.
center. Oh, it's too bad.
Okay, well, yeah, but I think your point's well taken nonetheless. so.
Because, Chris has got a valid point, okay? He wants to get it right. One of the other definitions I found was fulfillment center, and top of distribution center. In fulfillment center, it says, definition I found, fulfillment is when a third party or third-party logistics provider fulfills the customer order for e-commerce retail. This includes warehouse, shipping, inventory management, and more.
Yeah.
There's another definition for you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure there are
On top of
bunches.
distribution center.
Okay.
So, you can keep on going at this and dig deeper. So, but it's too bad you can't do it
All right.
more.
Well, so at this point, I'm going to suggest, just let every board member make a comment if they wish. And then I would suggest that we continue. Yes.
Question for Paul. Since Chris has opened this up, could he modify it to change it to a moratorium?
I don't think so, because that's outside the scope
Yeah, it's a
of
scope
the original article.
Okay.
The other question I would have on that is, we don't have a distribution center defined yet in the zoning bylaws.
We're clearly working on a gnarly problem. Paul, do you have any?
I don't.
Okay.
I mean, I'll be honest with Chris. Chris, I do appreciate everything that you've worked on for the past couple of weeks. I don't like, I mentioned before, the precedent that this is setting, because you've stopped our work on a particular, right now there was a proponent in front of us. You've stopped it because of this, which is right. and we didn't realize that. We all learned that. And I think you took it out of the planning board's hands, and you're only here because of one particular project right now, and I do appreciate that. But I think what you're trying to do is affect the entire town, paint it with one big brush, and I think we need to do, like we've done in the past, an overlay. There's certain areas in town that this may be a good use for, but we haven't had the time yet to even look at it. And I think you would have been surprised without mentioning the name. I think you're going down the road. We had that project under full control. We were doing our jurisdiction of the bylaws and letting that process go through the process, and then you've jumped to this process. And I do appreciate and I do admire you for doing this. I think that we've got a good start. But again, I look at the rest of the uses too, right? So I asked the planning board that if we're going to go down this road, we need to look at the other uses where as well.
Okay.
And do some homework. It's going to take some time.
Oh,
But I think,
I think
right now, I don't know if it's a point of no return for this town meeting, but.
Well, let me pop in here, because I've been sitting on my comment for a while. We have a mechanism to control this kind of thing. It is the major business plan. It requires a special permit. I have not heard anybody present to me a project that could not be managed and handled and limited with the major business complex
Special permit.
special permit, which proposals of this sort would handle. I think the major business complex permit covers it completely, and I have not seen, at least I'll speak of recent memory, I have not seen a project that happened with an unpleasant outcome, having gone through the major business complex mechanism, that would have had a more pleasant outcome with this. So I think it's a topic that we need to have a great deal of discussion on. There are aspects of this that go way beyond the definitions. They have to do with our ability to limit traffic on town roads, which we'll probably discuss a little later in our work session. It has to do with the different impact on infrastructure of small and large vehicles. There's a whole lot of questions here that go way beyond even the scope of the planning board's authority that need to be discussed at several levels. So I think we're perfectly safe right now. We have a mechanism that can control a project, a highly problematic project. And I think we have, therefore, the benefit of time to consider this in more detail. And there are several ways we could do that. It might be a joint board subcommittee or committee, because there, as I said, there are questions here that go beyond the planning board's capabilities. Anyway, that's my thought. I don't think we need these articles. I think they have certainly brought to light a great deal of important consideration, but I don't think we need it to protect the town right now.
I agree.
Are we
Yeah.
going around the table, or what
Yeah,
are we
and
doing?
you're on.
So first, I don't know if we closed the public hearing yet.
No, we have not.
Okay, because Virginia had her hand up at some point a few minutes ago, and she didn't get recognized, so we should let her speak as well, if she still
Well,
wants to.
the plan here is to continue, so people will get another shot.
Okay, but, I mean, she came to the meeting and listened for an hour or whatever it's been, and
So who's
raised her hand to
monitoring?
talk. I think we should let her speak.
I didn't see the hand up. I
Oh,
apologize.
you didn't? Okay.
All right, let her in.
Yeah, we can, but go ahead, finish up.
So I have a couple points. One is, there are a number of significant issues that this sequence of warrant articles have brought forth that are, ongoing chronic issues. Warehouses are certainly
the development or building of warehouses is certainly an issue that a lot of people in town have strong feelings about, and which we have been recently confronted with several developments seeking to bring warehouses. So I think it's timely that, a citizen has brought something forth. Obviously, traffic is a significant issue for this development and any, and growth is a significant issue in this town, partially because of the infrastructure, partially because of the sewer, and partially because since I've gotten here, I've heard we're built out, but yet we keep building a lot. To date, we have, we're saying that we need more time to look at this, but I agree with the proponent that, the planning board brought something that was turned back, and it's been 2 years and we have done nothing. And I feel like we're exposed for that reason to, we're passive. We react to things being brought to us instead of thinking about what we can do to have better things be brought to us. And so whether we want this warrant to go through, this warrant article to pass or not, the fact is it's going to town meeting and we're going to be asked for our input, but it's going to town meeting.
Yeah,
because we
it
have not
certainly
done
is, yeah.
something in the intervening 2 years. So I think it's in our best interest for us and the proponent and Henry, if he's willing to chime in, and George, if he's willing to help out, and anyone else who had, and Paul Haverty, anyone else who's willing and able to, chime in with helpful suggestions of how we can make this sequence of warrant articles better. But I don't think we should have the perfect be the enemy of the good. And it is a good starting point. And I think where we have not done anything else, we're kind of stuck with, we have the next however many weeks to do something. So we can do it or we can not do it, but it's happening. There's a train coming down the track. So what are we going to do about that? I would like to try and make this warrant article better and plug the holes, as George said, and, try and imagine the unforeseen consequences as Henry queried. But I would like to make it better and bring it to town meeting, and hopefully bring it to town meeting in a format that we can get behind.
Well, it's going to town meeting anyway. There's no
Right.
question about that.
Right.
It's just simply a question of whether we recommend or do not recommend, and whether we contribute, and I think we've contributed a fair bit already and will continue to do so. It's not our article. Keep that in mind. It is a citizen petition. It's not our article.
It is not your article, but I am asking for
We
your
have
assistance.
it has our interest, and we will continue to interact with you on that. There's a lot of good stuff here. Okay, that all said, Anita, did you want to say anything?
Tim's online too. Tim's on the line.
And Tim's on, Tim, you out there, Tim?
Yep. Virginia.
Yep, I'm here. If you're ready for me, I really don't have anything to say that hasn't been said already, and so to not beat a dead horse, I'll just, I'll pass it this time, and we'll deal with it in the future.
Okay, thanks, Tim.
Virginia, is she still there?
Oh, yeah, and Virginia was out there, and I presume that's our select board, Virginia. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had just raised my hand on a procedural comment when there was some discussion going on about the timing and the select board and voting on the language as it's submitted into the warrant. So I just wanted to clarify that we do have to sign the warrant on September 12th. Sometime after that, we will be hearing briefings from proponents and voting on recommendations. It is not unprecedented if we know that there's an article being worked or that there are amendments that are going to be proposed on the town meeting floor for us to consider that. So I just wanted to clarify that I think as long as the board knows what's going on, we can manage some flexibility in terms of when we vote on recommendations.
Great. Hey, thanks a lot. Yeah, we may just take you up on that. Okay, Anita, before we continue, you want to say anything?
No, I've already said.
Okay,
my two
thanks.
cents.
Okay,
And it's down to me,
it's down to you.
and you forgot me.
I have never forgotten. You get the last word. You always do.
Sometimes I plan it that way. Okay. So, I have to say that I never like it, citizen petitions, because any way you look at them, they're disjointed with the bylaws.
I think you've mentioned that to me before.
Yeah. And I really appreciate that you came to us and asked us to contribute to it. I would have appreciated it a lot more if you had come to us with a proposal instead of a citizen petition and worked with us over the course of time to do the research and develop the right thing. So, I appreciate the edits that you've made in terms of small, medium, and large distribution. I think that helps. But the definitions of warehouse versus distribution center still leave vast gaps in determining what a use actually is for us to be able to review it. And I have to say that probably more than 50% of the applications that would come to us would be nebulous under these definitions. And that's a bad thing, okay? I'm concerned because there are businesses today all over town that fit in these distribution center definitions that would no longer be permitted to be businesses in Chelmsford. Now, they'll be grandfathered, they won't be chased out, but we won't have any more of those businesses able to open up here. Or they won't be able to open up in the kinds of places that they currently exist.
Are there specific examples that I could look into?
Yeah, I could put some together
Okay,
for
if you could email me
All
those,
right.
I'd appreciate it.
And the business model that we're seeing and that we identified as we went through master planning, which was what we were doing in those 2 years and didn't try tweaking the bylaws because we were doing the research behind it, showed us a couple things. One, that businesses are moving toward distribution models, that retail storefronts are becoming more and more scarce, and the model is that sales will be through some type of a storage and shipment model. So we can expect that if we're going to have the sales of goods in Chelmsford, that we're going to need these types of businesses, okay? And we're going to need to be able to plan where they are, where they go, and how they move goods. One of the problems that we have here that has been ongoing is that we're losing our businesses. And it's been slow creep. We have changed zoning with the overlays to promote more businesses moving in. We hired an economic development manager to promote the 129 area and all of our industrial areas. And we've still lost more than 33%, actually we've lost something like 37% of our commercial industrial tax base. And our residents have to make up all of those taxes in their tax rates. So for everybody that is complaining about your taxes going up, this loss of business is a big contributor to it. So I'm really, really, really hesitant to do anything from a zoning standpoint that chases companies out of town or that prevents companies from coming into town. As Mike said, we have in our zoning bylaws the ability to regulate uses over 20,000 square feet based on their impacts to the neighborhood, and we do. You know, traffic is one of the things we always look at, guys. So I don't see where this is plugging a explosive gap. I don't see where it's urgent that we put this in place because we have the mechanism today to prevent things that are really destructive to neighborhoods. And the protection of neighborhoods is what our zoning bylaws are all about. I mean, that's really what we focus on, is protecting our neighborhoods. In the discussions we've had with you here before, one of the questions I asked was, you know, why not just put controls on and more definition of controls on traffic as opposed to controls on the use inside the buildings? Because one, we can't really define what's going on inside the buildings. And two, it's inside the buildings. Who cares? But we do care about the traffic. And your reply was that, but these types of uses are using all automation and they're not bringing jobs to town. Well, yeah, that's where industry is going today. Robots are everywhere. That's how it works. If we don't want those businesses in town, what businesses are coming to town? How much of our business base can we afford to lose? So yes, I'll be very, very happy to work with you on these definitions. But understand that I do not support this bylaw change for those reasons.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
There is a resident who has had his hand up, Eric Finney.
Okay, if we could make it quick, because I made a solemn promise to our town council that I'd keep this to an hour, and I've made a liar out of myself.
All right.
Okay,
I'm done.
hi, this is Eric Finney. Can you guys just confirm that you can hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
All right, thank you. I'm a resident at 8 Clark Ave. I'm an abutter to the River Neck Road, the 199-201 parcel. I've been attending a lot of the board meetings about the project, you know, with the developer, and, you know, listening to all the public hearings and your concerns and feedback on the project. I came in late to this call. I've read Chris's warrant article letters that he sent out. I like where it's going. And there was a comment made earlier about you, about that, you know, we already have, you know, the planning board, you know, is the, you know, mechanism for which we control. And I understand that, but as a resident and hearing a lot of the concerns from my neighbors and others in East Chelmsford, just around this project, like on River Neck Road, it's not that we don't, like, we understand like what the planning board does. It's just that, like, we need assurance, because, you know, I think all of us understand that there's a compromise that has to be made between, you know, getting businesses and projects in town going and, you know, with the zoning bylaws. But I think that's why you're seeing some of these articles presented. That's just my opinion. I feel like I can speak for my other neighbors that would feel the same way. And one of the things, you know, you've been talking about, you know, like, and we should also look at trucks, you know, not just the size of the building. I would take it even a step further. I mean, some of this has already come up in the public hearings on the River Neck Road project, but, you know, like, my biggest thing is like a proximity to a neighborhood. Like, can you limit like a warehouse or distribution center, you know, within so many feet or like a mile of a residential street? I don't know if that's possible. But, you know, what about like hours of operation? You know, I mean,
all of those things can be managed, and they routinely are in various decisions.
But is that clearly defined in the zoning laws?
No,
like,
it is
the one zoning. So then there's no guarantee. Is my point. And as an abutter to a project such as the River Neck Road project, that's like a real concern to me. I mean, I have lost sleep over this project. You know, and
if I may comment on that quickly, Eric, yes, it is a concern. As a abutter, it's a bigger concern, but an absolute determination at one place becomes an impediment at another. There are some real advantages to having some flexibility on the part of somebody, and it happens to be the way this town is set up, the planning board. It wouldn't necessarily have to be. Absolute assurance is going to lead to situations in which things that are perfectly reasonable can't happen because the assurance could not be framed well enough to open the doors for everything that at a later date you decide you really wanted to have. That's why I think the discretion has a lot to be said for it. But continue if you'd like. And
yeah, I just had like appreciate you hearing me on those concerns. My one question, you know, with, like I say that the warrant article goes through and we're looking at the sizes, like what would prevent a developer coming in and say building multiple small buildings? Like when you look at a project, a large area, and a developer wants to come in, instead of a 250,000 square foot, like would we have languages in an article that's being presented to not just, would it look at like the total square footage, regardless of how many buildings, or are you looking at, you know, I would hate to see like a little loophole there.
That's part of the problem here. There are so many ways that could be gamed. Split your big lot up into 5 small ones.
Legally.
Legally. And now, you know,
you're not going to cover every what if
you're
scenario.
never, ever, ever going to cover all the what ifs. That's why I say absolute prohibitions have consequences.
Well, it's
Well,
further.
I would just say that,
Yeah.
you know, when we're, I think it was Chris, you know, if something could be put in, you know, some language to kind of prevent that, you know, because I think there was a project off of 495 somewhere, and I looked on a map, and it looked like it had 2 small buildings. I don't know what the size of them were, but it looked like it was all one parcel.
Yeah, well,
I mean,
the trick is probably going to be somebody splitting the parcel up, and then you're going to get into questions about what is the actual ownership of each parcel. Is it identical or almost identical? And how almost identical does it need to be before it's really the same owner? And boy, you're in land court so fast.
Yeah, this is also complicated by the fact that today, the ownership of buildings has, the model for ownership of buildings has changed so that we're seeing more and a much higher percentage of our commercial industrial buildings are leased buildings. And the owner of the building, the developer of the building, has no idea who they're going to find for a leasee and how they're going to use it. So when we get a project that comes in, not only do we not know what kind of a business is going into it, but the owner doesn't know what kind of a business is going into it. So now here we are with a proposal that is based on the use inside that building. And at the time that the building is being proposed and constructed, nobody knows what that use is.
Can I just address that point for a minute? That use table is filled with these types of uses inside buildings.
Yeah.
That's the job of the planning board, is to determine what is the use inside that building.
It actually isn't. It's the zoning
It's-
officer.
It's the.
Well, it's,
Yeah.
but the
It's not
bylaws are
us.
written based on use. If you don't want me to do it based on use for this, you shouldn't be doing it based on use for any other item in that table,
That's a fair point. Yeah.
because they're all based on use.
Complex.
And I do appreciate the board's comments. I just wanted to respond to a couple of them, if I might. Mr. Chairman, you mentioned that the major business complex allows you to control
Yes.
problematic projects. While that's entirely true, it does not necessarily allow you to prevent problematic projects.
We have
Yes, it
counsel
does.
here. I mean,
Yeah, council can
we need
answer
to put
one.
that to bed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can put that to bed right
The
away.
board has legal authority to deny.
Yeah, we can deny.
We can deny it.
So the grant of a special permit is discretionary. So the planning board certainly does have the authority to deny. This is something I was actually going to cover
Yes,
Yeah.
tonight.
later tonight, but, so, I mean, I can actually go over what the standards are.
Yeah.
So generally, when challenged by applicants, special permits, decisions issued by boards of appeals are usually upheld because, again, it's a discretionary permit. And as long as you are properly exercising your discretion, your decision should be upheld. On appeal, the court will review all of the information de novo, which means that they don't rely upon the record that was established at the planning board process. They're going to look at everything all over again on their own. New information can be submitted as part of that process. And they're going to take the factual findings. They're not entitled to any deference. All right, so the court will actually make its own factual findings, but then it's going to review the decision, and it's only going to overturn that decision if it's based on legally untenable grounds or is unreasonable, whimsical, capricious, or arbitrary. Yes.
Arbitrary and capricious.
And the board has come nowhere close to that
Never.
ever.
That's
We just
something that,
don't.
that
Your decisions are-
Evan helps,
Yes.
Evan
He
and
makes
Paul
sure that
keep
we
us from
don't.
going there.
So, and there are decision
Wait a
criteria.
minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. Sorry. Can I just say something, though? I think, like, up until last meeting, we didn't even know what the criteria we could rely on to say no. We had, like, Mike
You just
felt
brought
that,
in, you brought in the
like, if
financial
it didn't
part of it.
conform to
Speaking
the
for
neighborhood,
yourself.
we couldn't do it. Nancy felt that it could. Like, so you understand why people, yeah, even though it's in our discretion, unless we're all educated on how to make a decision and what we can do, and I know as a new planning board member, I've been told this, you know, you've got to be careful, you can't say no because we might get sued. So you only rely on traffic. That's what's been said to me. So I'm glad we're having this meeting afterwards to go through this with the attorney. And quite frankly, I think our attorney should be at the meeting all the time. But you understand where people are coming from and where this applicant's coming from.
Applicant? Do we have an applicant?
Not in this process, no.
In this process.
So I did want to point out, the special permit criteria is contained in section 195-103, but there's also additional special permit criteria in different subsections, such as in the major business special permit. There is separate criteria that is over and above the criteria that's listed in section 195-103.
And those are fairly powerful in major business complex, as I recall.
Mhm.
Pretty broad, too.
Yeah, pretty broad.
Yeah. Yep.
I mean, a good question for council is of the 6 special permit approval criteria, generally speaking, which is the most obvious or easiest from a data-driven perspective to use for denial?
It absolutely is traffic. That's 100% correct.
So if that's the case.
I mean, if you want to run through those now again, because I was prepared to run through them.
Sure, well,
Later.
actually, it would be good if you did, with this hearing open.
Sure.
Because I think there's a lot of people that would like to hear about it.
All right, so the special permit criteria are in section 195-103B. The first criteria is social, economic, or community needs which are served by the proposal. I look at this criteria and I think this is pretty wishy-washy. I think that an applicant shouldn't have too much difficulty coming up with some community need served by the proposal. So I don't think that this is a strong basis for conditioning or denying a project. The second one is traffic flow, safety, including parking and loading. This is a very strong criteria.
Very strong.
This is certainly something that would be the valid basis of a denial, and it has been on projects throughout the state.
Yeah.
I would certainly want, because again, if there's an appeal and it goes to court, it's a de novo hearing, and I'm going to be called in, to represent the planning board as part of that process. I'm going to want to be able to have factual basis for a planning board's decision.
Yeah.
So it would be very helpful in any decision that the planning board issues, that it is relying upon the advice of a peer review consultant who has reviewed the traffic information and has made a determination, in fact, that there are safety concerns. And that should hold up very strongly in a court. Third, is adequacy of utilities and other public services. And this certainly
Sewer.
could be a valid factor, and sewer is definitely one of those issues. And not just because there is
A moratorium.
a moratorium currently, but also if there's an applicant that wants to do a project that isn't already served by sewer, is going to increase the impacts on the sewer capacity and therefore runs afoul of the sewer moratorium, then they may want to provide an alternative, either through on-site septic or an on-site wastewater treatment facility. It would certainly be appropriate for the planning board to require the applicant to provide some sort of proof that that sort of facility is feasible on the site. Number 4, neighborhood character and social structures.
Important.
It's important. I think that this is a little bit wishy-washy. Again, when you're talking about a use that is allowed in a particular zoning district, but only through the issue of a special permit, you need to be able to show that use is so far out of the surrounding neighborhood type of uses and the impacts that it would have, that impact there is different than other places in the zoning district where these could be allowed. What you can't do is say, we don't think that distribution centers, under the current zoning, that we don't think distribution centers should be allowed anywhere in this zoning district, and therefore we're not going to allow it. That would be legally untenable. But if you're able to show that there is concerns in a specific location with regards to neighborhood characteristics, then that would be the sort of thing that could be upheld. Number 5, impact to the natural environment. This likely relates to wetlands and wildlife impacts. Again, I think that if you have an applicant that's able to show they're compliant with state's wetlands requirements and the local wetlands requirements, and if they're compliant with natural heritage requirements in terms of wildlife, I'm not sure that this would be something you would be able to stop a project on. It would really be very context dependent. And then the 6th is potential fiscal impact, including impact on town services, tax base, and employment. This, impact on town services is pretty straightforward. A use which will strain public safety compared to a different use that has less impact, that might be, that sort of a thing. Sewer, again, is the same question. Most commercial uses are going to have a positive fiscal impact on the town because, and I think it was noted by somebody earlier tonight, residential use has the most negative impact
Yeah.
on,
Yeah.
on fiscal impact of the town, and commercial generally has a net positive impact. It's difficult to quantify. I mean, if the question is it this use or another use? And is that the fiscal impact you're looking at? And then again, is it, even if you could show that this alternative use would provide a more positive fiscal impact, is that alternative use actually likely to be proposed at that site? So that would get into a very fact-dependent
Okay, yeah,
sort
I
of
see
thing.
what you
But
mean.
So, like, biotech to warehouse is basically what we're talking about in 129.
Yep.
You cannot take that into effect.
I didn't say,
There
I'm
is
not saying
nothing-
you can't take it into effect, into account. What I'm saying is, it's something that would require a lot of research and a lot of information before you could really
I mean,
rely upon that.
So you'd have to show that there was a real likelihood that such a use could be found for the property. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
If you want to use that as a basis.
Right.
for a
Market
decision.
analysis, basically.
Correct.
So what about if you have a Class A building versus a Class C building?
Again, the question is,
Because there is,
if that class.
because you definitely, classes have different financial, I
There's
mean, that's
no-
pretty
but
black
there's
and
no
white,
demand
right?
for the
Class A
Class
versus
A.
Class
Right,
C.
the problem is if the Class A building is vacant and there's no potential user that wants to come in and use it for that use, and therefore they would be able to go in and get an abatement, you know, that's all part of sort of the analysis that would need to be done.
Yeah. Okay.
But those are numbers, right? Like Class A, like you can put, I mean, you have the numbers, we could easily look at that.
There's one Class A building on 129, 300 Apollo. The rest of Bs and Cs.
Yep.
But back to Paul's point on the biotech. Per the 6 approval criteria, the town, by instituting a moratorium on sewer, has essentially told the marketplace that biotech that uses high wastewater is off the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Unless they had their own.
Unless they had
So
their own
that-
treatment.
yeah,
Can we,
yes.
Yeah.
can we
But I'm just saying,
put that
we're
in
off
that
the table
bracket?
because
Because
of
when you
that.
say biotech that uses a lot of wastewater, there's certain types
Sure.
of biotech,
Sure.
right? Not all biotech uses a lot of
No,
wastewater.
and that's why I
So
said
please
specific
be very
too.
careful when
I
you-
said specific too. My point to you is, it's no longer a level playing field.
Yeah.
4 years ago, this was a level playing field. If you guys wanted to play this, you know, the special permit fiscal impact assessment, you could. But now it's very difficult because
Got
the
no
town,
demand.
the town has created rules and restrictions that impede the market. So I don't know how the planning board would use lack of infrastructure as an analysis to say, well, you know, there's a market demand for a higher and better use. They're not here. They're not expressing interest. They're not here. There's no demand. If you need to bring in the property owners to confirm that, you can. Or speak to Frank Rand, your chief assessor.
Well, okay. I think we've got the basics there on the
So my analysis, there are criteria that you can very clearly use. There are other criteria that is a little more difficult to implement, but could be useful if the right analysis is
It
taken.
sounds like traffic's the winner.
Traffic, certainly, it's the most clear cut.
Yeah.
It's the most common reason for a denial of a
Yeah.
special permit being.
Good, and it's in our
That's
pocket.
what I advised
Yeah.
Anita.
Yeah.
Is that while you can use all 6 criteria, if you only need one, there's no need to dive deep on the others.
And you only do need one.
Yeah, okay.
Paul?
But could I?
Chris had more.
Could I just have one more comment?
We're
Just
gonna
one, that's it.
we're gonna have to put a stop on this
Yeah,
pretty soon.
just one last comment, and
What's
that'll
that?
be it. Nancy, you mentioned that we want to promote businesses, and I 100% agree with that. We don't want to turn businesses away. However, we want to promote the right businesses. And the bylaws are filled with businesses that we don't want in our town. We don't want a refuse incinerator. We don't want any more asphalt plants.
Thank God.
And those are essentially banned in town because there's no zone where those are allowed. So yes, I agree that we don't want to run businesses out of town. We want the right businesses, but we also want the right size distribution center for our town. And that was my point with agreeing to the sizes, is it's, give you guys the special permit for the medium and small, but let's get rid of the larger ones, because those don't belong in a town our size.
Okay.
And that was the major point.
You got it.
And we can, like I said, we can debate the sizes now at town meeting, however you want. If they're not the right sizes, we can adjust them. But that was the whole point of
Yeah,
of
you
me agreeing to
understood.
that.
Yeah, let's take a look at the top end size.
Yep.
And let's take a look at the wording of the definitions.
Yep.
Okay.
Because right now, they're giving me heartburn.
Absolutely.
Because I can't put things in pockets, you know?
Okay.
If
Okay.
you're gonna continue, it
We're
has
going to
be
have
the-
to,
It's
huh?
gotta be the 28th. Your 14th is packed,
Packed.
jam-packed,
All right, we're going to have to continue the 28th.
unless you do a special.
Do we want to do a special on this?
And if you're doing a special, is Chris bringing information to you, or are you bringing information?
I would
to-
suggest that be done through you. Email it in. I don't think we,
I mean, it sounds like both parties have.
yeah, there may be some things
Yeah.
to do.
homework.
Is the 7th even feasible for people? Anita can't make it.
Yeah, I would.
I'm actually traveling that day.
Okay, so we can't do the 7th. That's 2 members out. That would be a problem.
September 21st?
21st, does that work, guys?
It's good with me.
Good with me. All right, let's,
31st? What about the
21st.
31st? Has the advantage of being before.
There is no 31st.
there is no,
August 31st?
Oh,
28th.
Next week.
Oh, that sounds good.
August
I have a little
31st.
Christy, she's like, my back is killing me. I said, oh yeah, I have back pain.
Somebody go mute, please.
all right, we're searching for a potential date for a special session. And to,
Go with that, what'd you just say, the 21st, right?
September
I
21st?
can't do August 31st, so I can only do in September.
Next Wednesday?
that's August 31st.
Oh, I apologize, I had the
I
wrong.
can't do that.
September 21st.
You wanna do,
And do we have time to post it?
oh, yeah, for what day?
The 21st, we certainly do.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't they say
Well,
they needed it by the 6th or something?
Yeah.
I have a CPC meeting that night, I believe, and I missed the last one because they don't have remote and I had acute COVID. So
Those start at 6:30.
yeah, so could we maybe do a 7:30 start?
Okay, we can do 6:30. We're talking the 21st?
No, 7:30.
7:30. Okay, 7:30, 21st.
Okay, but Virginia said that something about the 6th.
So what I can do is I can make some changes, see if they're amenable to some of the folks that
Yeah.
provided some input. Provide that as the final text for the town meeting, and then continue to work with you.
Okay.
Assuming that there'll be an immediate amendment, potentially friendly amendment that
Yeah,
we work out.
okay. I think that's the best we're going to get. Okay, can I have a motion to,
Close public hearing?
Oh, no, keep it.
No, keep it
public
open.
hearing is
Continue.
open, but let's
Continue the public hearing,
continue the public hearing to
September 21st.
September 21st at 7:30.
Moved.
Moved?
Before you do, I just want
Yeah.
to let you know, I'm not available that night if you.
Oh, that's okay.
Okay, I
You
just wanted
lucky
to-
soul.
See you on town meeting floor.
Aren't you lucky?
Yeah. I think we, because it's going to be, I think, a single-purpose meeting, I think we can keep the focus on it pretty well. So I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, in favor?
Aye.
It's 4 of us here.
Aye.
5,
I,
6,
Aye.
7. Okay, we're there.
Aye.
Okay, now, I broke my promise to Paul Haverty. Although he did get some of his stuff in. Thank you
Yeah, I'm
very
already
much.
halfway through.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was good.
This is good.
That was good.
We are now in a work session. Before we get deeply into the work session, I do want to let you know, just let the board know in general, that I did have a meeting today with some of the Davis people. They had questions about process and procedure. I'll tell you what I told them.
So, Mike,
Yeah.
that should be brought up at the next public hearing.
Okay.
for Davis.
So the public hearing's the right time to?
Correct,
Okay.
yes.
That was nothing of grand substance, but I wanted to let you know that I did that. So, we will take that up then. That'll be that's on the 14th.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just bring that, remind me to say something then, if you would.
You better write it down, because you'll forget it.
No, but he won't.
Well, I'll write it down.
You'll get it on the agenda. Okay, now, we are in work session.
You guys,
Yep, I'm sorry, go ahead.
nope, nothing.
Okay. Thanks for coming, Paul. I'm sorry I couldn't keep it a little shorter.
That's okay.
But you actually have done a very nice shot at answering some of the stuff having to do with the criteria for special permits. The other subject I wanted to throw at you, and I think I sent a couple of inquiries about that, is we keep facing traffic-based problems. We've got Golden Cove Road. We've got the discussions taking place on River Neck. We've had discussions of this sort concerning Route 40. They're all over the place.
110.
110, it's all over the place. What tools, legal tools, do we have as a planning board and as a town to control and limit particularly truck traffic? I mean, all the way from closing a road completely, can we make them, what can we do about making things one way? Can we limit trucks to local deliveries only? I mean, there's a whole slew of things that I've heard of, and I don't know what we can do.
Better yet, what can we not do?
Well, what you can't do is actually impose a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion.
On anything?
So we can't do townwide.
That is something that requires the approval of Mass DOT.
Okay.
So that happened.
And at the local level, it has to go through the select board, correct?
Yes,
Not the planning.
So the
board.
select board has to request it of the DOT,
correct.
and the DOT will sit on it for 3 years and then maybe come up with an answer.
Well, so they have standards as for, whether a road can be subject to a heavy commercial vehicle exclusion. Numbered routes, so 110, 129
Yeah,
are not eligible
right.
for truck exclusions. Other roads are potentially eligible, but in order to get granted a truck exclusion, you have to identify a suitable alternative, and that has to be accepted by DOT.
And what would make an alternative suitable?
Basically, it's going to be something that is not going to so inconvenience truck traffic that they have to, drive too far out of their way to avoid using this one particular road. And I'll give you the example, Golden Cove Road.
Yep.
Both.
Because I'm sure some of you remember, at one point in time, the town actually posted a heavy truck exclusion on Golden Cove Road, and were instructed by DOT to remove it because it hadn't been approved, hadn't gone through the process, and it wasn't eligible.
Is that a state numbered road?
So,
No,
so was it,
but it's
no other
connecting
way.
state numbered roads.
But so it doesn't have to be, you can't put that, the block on trucks on a town road. The DOT has, looks at that as well?
Anywhere you want to put a heavy truck exclusion has to have Mass DOT
Any
approval.
Okay, I thought it
so
was
the
just-
fact that
How
they
did
can,
Route 4 get the exclusion? 'Cause
the bridge
trucks are not-
doesn't support it.
Is that why? That's the only reason?
Not familiar with that.
No.
495 bridge doesn't support it.
That's what I heard. I
Oh,
don't
Because
know.
there's an alternate route, Route 3.
But it is it's a numbered route.
Yeah, but
That's right.
the state approved it. The town
So they have variance.
likely requested it. That came about during the Route 3 expansion project.
Okay.
Yeah, it may have been a deal
So,
out there.
so the previous experience with Golden Cove, was there a definitive finding that it would not qualify, or that
So
They were not approving it because we hadn't gone to them first.
that predates my time, not only as town council, but I think I wasn't even on the Board of Appeals yet at that point.
Okay.
But my recollection was they rejected it because there was no suitable alternative.
But you can go back down, you can come down to the center and turn,
And DOT determined that wasn't suitable.
because,
I'm going to guess because of the amount of time it would take.
Yeah,
And turning radius, probably.
and there's
Yeah.
probably a turning radius issue there. Okay, so,
about,
Wilson Street,
yeah,
turning radius. You couldn't get a truck down there.
yeah.
really? Okay.
So, all right, so it sounds as if heavy truck exclusions are likely not a practical tool for us.
Correct.
Well,
In terms of making roads one way, again, that's all public safety, select board jurisdiction.
Okay, but does the DOT have control over that?
I don't
Or
think
do
you
we not
would.
want to ask them?
I don't think that they would unless it impacts, the access to state highway.
If they own the road,
Yeah, if they own the road, they can
Right.
do what they want.
so could we make Golden Cove one way?
Of course, the people on Golden Cove probably wouldn't be so happy.
Again,
Well, I'm just asking.
right, and that would be something I think that DOT would want to look at. Because if it impacts, if there's no suitable alternative route for the trucks going in that other direction, then it may create a problem with them.
Okay.
Which way would you want to make it?
We're not.
Straight up.
So I think in terms of impact on traffic in the town, you're really limited to the imposition of conditions on specific projects. And I'll give an example, the Walgreens, right?
Yeah.
Is a right turn only exiting there. That came from a planning board condition, right?
Yeah.
That's the sort of ability that you have really to dictate where traffic goes.
Okay, so,
So,
go ahead.
do we have the ability to put limitations into the bylaws in terms of the amount of new truck traffic generated?
I think you would. I think it's difficult to quantify. I mean, I know ITE does categorize, by use type, by building size, things of that nature, to try to get general ideas of how much, traffic, truck traffic, a particular use would generate. But I don't know that it would be 100% accurate. We heard from Erin Drew earlier tonight, in her experience, saying that some of the smaller facilities actually create a larger number
Yeah.
of truck trips because they're turning things over more quickly. So I think that it's an approach you can look at, but I do think there's some limitations to it as well.
Yeah.
So I don't think anything is gonna be 100% accurate.
Absolutely correct.
And we
But you're-
can't expect it to be, but to me, dealing with limiting traffic is a whole lot more important than limiting what goes on inside the building.
Yeah.
But the question
And I
is, do
would
you want to
much-
limit it, through a zoning bylaw provision that says you can't have more than X number of,
I'd rather do
Truck
that
vehicle
than
trips?
eliminate distribution in
The question
town.
I have for you, Nancy, is, like, even the idea, I brought it up,
Yeah.
but how do you enforce it?
Well, then, that's the
that.
next set of
It's like anything in
questions.
this town. I mean,
It's, there is no enforcement
the
mechanism.
left
There
turn, right
can
hand,
be.
I mean, how do you really
There
enforce
can
it?
be.
I mean,
So you can do it through the zoning bylaw, but you can also do it through the decision.
and that's what I
yeah,
was
and
gonna
a
say.
decision's probably the better place to do it.
Cap the number
That's
of-
my
Free, but
personal view.
2 years later, how
No.
do you count who's gonna be out there counting the trucks?
Yeah.
This is why the model is Westford. You have
I
to,
mean-
you have to require the technology.
So that's what Westford has done with the asphalt plant.
Yeah,
Really?
they've got cameras up.
No, they also have 2 trucks sitting at the street. They have a guy full-time there in his pickup truck.
To prevent them from.
Making sure
Yeah.
that they're turning left
Yeah.
into Chelmsford.
Right.
And then there's a U-turn area where they're making the U-turns 100 feet down, where they've now put cones in there so no one can turn.
Who's
So they're
they?
officially
Oh, yeah.
forcing them. Huh?
So the town's getting paid by the developer to do all
No,
this?
there's a Newport.
So
truck.
Newport
Truck. There's a
self-polices as well?
Self-police.
Okay, that's a
He's there
condition.
Full-time.
Okay.
There's a
Yeah.
full-time guy,
I
there's no
think we
technology.
ought to put a turnaround just inside the Chelmsford line.
Yeah.
Warfare.
And send it back, yeah, you could do
And
that.
send them back.
So what
Chelmsford
Westford
go to
did is they introduced technology
Yes, they did.
to ensure compliance.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, like counting of the trucks and cameras.
With surveillance.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah, who's monitoring that? Who monitors that?
My understanding is live surveillance with a live feed to town hall, police station, and they require either daily or weekly logs.
Okay.
And then they have a violation provision. Correct me if I'm wrong, Paul. I think
Yeah, there is a
their special
violation.
permit says if violated, the permit is null and void.
Correct.
Oh, I like that. I like
So-
that. a
so the
lot.
whole notion
So
that's
they
been
have a reason
introduced-
to self-police
Right.
then.
The whole notion that's been introduced during the public hearings that conditions are unenforceable, can't be relied upon. They can be. Chelmsford just hasn't gotten to a point where projects were of such a sensitivity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if it's such a sensitivity, and it can't be managed or mitigated, then deny.
Yeah.
If the board thinks that it can be managed or mitigated reasonably and provide protection, then you figure out a way to condition it with enforcement capabilities. We've never done that, but the legal ability's there.
It's heading that way.
Yeah, and we
Yes.
have
But we're gonna have to
examples we
do
can
that.
study.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can forward
Yeah.
a copy of
Yeah.
the Newport decision if you want.
I'd love to see a copy of
Yeah.
the Newport decision, actually, because, we might learn a few tricks.
Yeah, I read
Yeah.
through the EPA decision on it, but I didn't read through the zoning on it. When we were looking at,
And remember, that was a negotiated decision because
Right.
that had been appealed to
Yeah.
the land court.
I remember that had
Because they didn't
gone
have
up
the proper
already.
zoning in place to prevent asphalt plants.
yeah,
Yep.
so,
Okay, it probably bears further discussion, not so much with the people here and with town council, but with, the public safety people.
Anything related to traffic.
Yeah,
So the way your process works is you've been peer reviewing
yep,
for these large traffic intensive, truck intensive. To Paul's point, when you carefully read those peer reviews, they don't necessarily come out and say that there's an unmitigatable safety
Right.
issue. So those peer reviews usually have some recommended conditions,
yeah,
like pre and post traffic counts, safety audits, tweaking of timing signals and things of that nature. I don't recall any of them coming out and clearly saying that there's a safety issue that is
Yeah.
a game stopper. Setting that aside, the next step is the planning board can always engage with the town traffic safety committee, which is made up of police, fire,
Yeah.
DPW, town manager. They're primarily not involved in regulatory matters, but they can be used for planning board business.
yeah,
But it's important you to remember, it's the select board and the road commissioners in Chelmsford.
yeah,
So even that Walgreens project that required the light, the planning board, that ultimately required select board
Board
to.
approval, right,
When you get into mitigation that involves modifying roadways, we need to bring in other departments and eventually the select board, because if you're gonna condition something that's relying upon that roadway modification, you need the buy-in from the other departments.
okay. All right, did you get any other good questions on your list?
So you had asked for an explanation of how an overlay district works?
Yeah, there have been questions over time. I think I have a pretty good sense, but,
So I went and looked at some of the case law just to sort of get some definitions. And one of the case notes, an overlay district is a technique in which new zoning is laid over an existing zone in order to further regulate certain permitted uses. The typical overlay district is not an independent zoning district, but simply a layer that supplements the underlying zoning district regulations. And I would note that there are really two types of overlay districts. The first type of overlay district is the one that actually adds additional restrictions upon uses in a particular zoning district, but only a portion of that zoning district. And for instance, we have them in Chelmsford. We have Aquifer Protection District. We have Floodplain District. Those are frequently overlay districts.
okay, so those increase regulation.
Correct.
In some space.
Correct. But there are also overlay districts that really offer alternatives.
COID.
Exactly, or the BAOZD.
yeah.
Right. All of those types of districts actually offer an alternative method of development and basically give the property owner the choice to either proceed under the underlying zoning or to proceed under the overlay zoning. And if they want to proceed under the overlay zoning, then they got to meet all the criteria that's set forth.
Yeah, and then presumably the criteria put some additional things in that the underlying probably wouldn't.
But
Architectural
also
review or something like that.
Right, provides relief from some
trade-offs.
of the underlying requirements as well.
Can an overlay prevent an underlying zone?
Well, an overlay can add restrictions to an underlying
But it
zone,
can't
which
prevent-
may,
can it
well,
outlaw- can we do an overlay for warehouses in, preventing warehouses in certain areas of the IA by putting an overlay on top of it, and it takes out the corners of an IA, or like near a residential neighborhood?
No, you.
Can you do that?
You would want to just change the zoning map for that.
So that's part of our, Deirdre, that's part of our
But
zoning
what
conflict.
you
No,
can
you
do
can't change
is
the
you can deny it in a particular zoning district and then add an overlay that would allow it in
Yeah.
areas of that zoning district.
So instead of leaving it permitted
yeah, I
everywhere
understand that.
and doing an
So
overlay
let
that
this
around the
citizens
edges
petition
that
go through.
prohibits it,
Right.
you would
Prohibited it.
prohibit it everywhere
Right.
and add an overlay in the middle that
allows.
allows it.
So the citizens petition goes forward, gets voted on,
Mhm.
and then we could add an overlay, say, in the BOID area.
Yep.
Like
Well, you could-
specific areas of 129 and
129,
and maybe Walmart.
The big, giant, ugly warehouse overlay,
Yeah.
you know,
Whatever you
or
wanna
something
call
like
You
that.
might want to go with a snappier title.
Is snappier title, okay.
Well, that's clarification.
Yeah,
Or when a developer comes and knocks, or Amazon comes and knocks on our door, it allows us to negotiate favorable terms to allow it, and then we go in front of town meeting to allow that overlay, just like we did for the West Campus.
yeah. Yeah, well, there were.
Right, like, I mean,
Yeah,
that to me is exactly what you're saying, but it puts the control back on, with us versus the developer.
It gives control to town
So I
meeting.
think
not
Yeah.
the
Yeah,
planning.
Not in the
it
West
transfers
Campus,
control to town
UMass
meeting.
West Campus worked out well.
it did, worked very well. But that was, there were very specific statutory reasons why we had to approach it that way, as I recall. We were taking advantage, I think, of some state statutes. Okay.
I think the only other thing that I hadn't covered was a question that Evan had posed regarding the public hearing process.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out, particularly when we're talking about special permits, planning board is required to open a duly noticed public hearing within 65 days of receiving the application. Once the public hearing is opened, there really is no time frame for when you have to close that public hearing. Once the public hearing is closed, you have 90 days to render your decision. The statute in General Laws, Chapter 48, Section 9 says, a decision must be rendered within 90 days of the date of the public hearing, but case law has interpreted that to mean when the public hearing closes. Right.
Okay.
All right.
I suppose if that were too badly abused, somebody would take it into court.
Can you clarify just when a public hearing opens?
Yep.
And we open it, and then what happens if the applicant doesn't come back? There's 120 days, right? Before
Yeah.
they have to re-engage? Is that part of that discussion, that time period, or no?
What happens when the applicant keeps putting it off?
Well, again, you have no deadline when you have to close it. You're not going to run into a constructive grant issue. But certainly, it's within your rights to not continue the public hearing. If an applicant
I thought
is
so, too.
going on and not coming forward with information, you can say, we're not granting you a continuance, we're going to hear it. You can show up or not show up, but if we don't hear what we need to hear, we're going to determine that you didn't submit sufficient information, and we're going to
But
deny
just to
you.
clarify that, Paul, if the board doesn't give clear direction as to what information they're looking for, you understand what I'm saying? Like, what you just said was, the applicant isn't providing the information that the board is looking for in a timely manner.
Right, well, obviously, you definitely have to let the applicant know what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And certainly, there are situations where a board is not really fully working with an applicant to let it know
Yeah.
exactly what it's looking for. And there are also times where an applicant is just stringing a board along
Right.
because it may have an alternative plan in mind.
Yeah.
Because it can't get its act together to get the materials. So you want to be, you don't want to jump to a conclusion and state, show up or we're going to deny it. But at some point, you're going to have to recognize that you're in a unending stalling tactic.
Yeah.
So there's
And
no,
move the
there's no,
process
there's no
forward.
date, time, official
What
date.
you're referring to is the COID provisions do have 120 days for the board to act.
But that's to make the COA determination.
No, even
that's
within the special permit process.
Oh, okay, so
So
that's
we've been
All right.
they've been extending that time to act. We clock it in with the town clerk.
So that's the one I'm.
So one of the incentives of COID is expedited permitting.
Right, okay. But on a regular special permit, there's no limitations.
Correct.
They
And
can
also-
continue
So on
to
a major
keep-
business special permit.
They
there's
can
no-
continue to
again, but
continue.
just-
Well, again, so the
We can pull the
board,
plug.
the board controls,
We can control it, but they.
board
there's
controls
no-
the pace of the
I was
meeting.
under the impression there was a date.
Oh,
There was a number
So-
of days, which.
And so that was
Thank you.
another thing I wanted to point out in terms of the opening of the public hearing. In order for a public hearing to have been effectively opened and held, it must afford the person entitled to it the right to support his allegations by argument, however brief, and if need be, by proof, however informal. So I just wanted to keep that in mind in terms of you hitting that 65-day period where you have to open the public hearing. If you try to do I'm going to open the public hearing, but we're not going to take any comment tonight, continue it to a further date, that could back you into a constructive approval. So you want to make sure that
You want to start it and start hearing stuff.
you have to take testimony, however brief,
Yeah.
from the applicant.
Okay.
You guys do a nice job at that.
Well, I mean, it's never our intent to stall.
No, we have
We've
a
done
nice
it
process
unintentionally
where the
several
applicant
times,
does
but
a
never
presentation, and
Yeah.
the board's never been accused of not providing ample time to anybody.
Yeah, right.
I know.
So the chair has the right to limit comments at a hearing to a particular topic, to limit the length of comments, to not hear public comment on a particular night, as long as there is eventually the opportunity
Yeah.
for the public to comment. I haven't actually looked at it yet, but I just learned today that there is a case up in front of the Supreme Judicial Court that's up for oral argument in November, that actually addresses the issue of public comment in board hearings. So I am going to take a look at that. and
Take
see.
a look. I mean, we might want to submit an amicus if
Yeah.
it's something that's important enough to us.
Yeah, you could have done a better job tonight. We would have been out of here.
Yeah.
We could get
Oh,
dinner.
would have been home by now.
Well, that's all I have, so unless anyone has any
Actually,
other
that was
questions.
profoundly
That's-
useful.
that's
I
useful.
actually, if you think of it, can you pop me a reference to the case that's
Sure.
going up before the SJC?
Yep, I'll look it
Because
up.
that's one I might want to,
So I do have one additional, I had sent this to
Yeah.
Paul. Any advice or guidance on how the board should be managing their public hearing? Not necessarily with the public, but with the applicant. What I mean by that is, chair always goes around the table and affords the opportunity for board members to comment. Some board members do, some don't. I think what you've said in the past is that there's no legal obligation for any board or individual to engage.
Correct.
But if something were to be denied and go to appeal, are there best practices
yeah.
for a more defensible decision?
Well, again, when you're talking about an appeal of a special permit, it's a de novo hearing. So the deliberation that occurred during the course of the process isn't really super relevant. The individual process of board members is not something that can be challenged during the appeal process. But I do think, it's helpful to the process to move things along
Yeah.
if the applicant is being provided information on a timely basis. Feedback, is extremely important, because if they're not getting feedback, they don't know what concerns to address.
Yeah.
And, you're not really going to move the process
Yeah,
forward.
and it's fundamentally unfair, which I think is ultimately
Like
where this all
asking
goes.
to have them look on the other side of, I didn't,
Have to give
I
a
mean, it
directive.
was part of the discussion, but one of us didn't actually ask them to go and do that.
Does it? It takes more than one.
Yeah.
Has to be the board, a majority of the board.
Majority.
Otherwise, the applicant isn't going to respond to an individual.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what Paul, I didn't hear what you just said.
Well, there was talk about traffic study at the other end of River Neck, and I just assumed
right.
that it was being looked into. And that was a wrong assumption on my part.
Right, it's certainly better to give a very clear and concise direction to the applicant in terms of what additional information you're looking for. If I'm representing an applicant at a board hearing and I hear a board member suggest something like that, I would certainly tell my clients, it doesn't matter that the rest of the board didn't ask you for that, you might want to take a look at providing it.
Well, the practice that I'm trying to put into place, which has been a little bit spotty, is at the end of the hearing session for a particular proponent, particularly on something larger, to summarize the things that we're looking for, kind of right at the end there.
It's very helpful.
Send them off with an
It's just
idea of what
helpful.
we're after. Now, I don't always get that
Oh,
right,
you get it
but I think that's probably a practice that we ought
But
to.
it's like summarizing action items from any
Yes, like,
meeting.
exactly. It's just like, been doing it for 52 years.
But we can all help with that too.
Yeah, I think we need to do that at the end of our hearings,
Anything else?
or at the end of a session, even if the hearing's continuing, let's try to send the proponent off with a laundry
To-do
list.
yeah.
Punch list.
A punch list, if you will, yes.
All right, well, unless there are any other questions, that's all I
Sir,
have.
thank you very much for
Thank you.
coming
Thank
down
you.
tonight, and,
Yeah, thanks, Paul.
yeah,
Very welcome.
hey.
Move to adjourn?
Well, not quite. We have
So
one-
close.
We're real close to
close.
it. Okay, new business, appoint Scott Rummel to the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I declare it done.
Okay,
Okay, he is officially appointed.
nice.
So it's done.
Yeah, that's done. Next meeting date, we have the 14th to 21st we have added.
You also received an email from the town manager for an invite to
Yes.
Monday, September 19th.
Yeah, I'll be there.
What is that for, Evan?
That's for MBTA zoning,
And there's another
discussion
issue
with,
too.
I
And
think,
the
Paul
sewer.
Haverty and
There's sewer
NIMCOG
proposal.
in the sewer bank mitigation
So if you want to see
proposal.
me again, I'll be there.
Hey,
Good.
I'll be there. We'll be heckling. I'm definitely gonna make that one, that's kind of
Good night.
I will not,
We'll see.
I will not be there.
Who will not be able to
I'll
be there?
cover for
I
you.
will not be there.
I'll try to do that.
Will you be able to zoom in, or?
No.
Good.
Okay.
Glad he came.
You refuse to zoom in?
All right,
No, 'cause I'm on the way.
now, we don't have any minutes, we don't have any other new business. I think we've actually got a lot of good information from council.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Good night.